Hello and welcome to Let's Talk F1 2015 for the Spanish Grand Prix. This is part of a year-long series where we're doing aerodynamic analysis on the Formula 1 cars ahead of their races on Sunday through Friday practice FP1 and FP2. But today is a bit different for the Spanish Grand Prix weekend. We're doing this on a Saturday after the qualifying, as unfortunately didn't have enough time yesterday to do it and didn't really catch the FP1 and FP2 action till this morning on Saturday. So now I'm going to be doing it, and we can talk about qualifying as well along with the aerodynamic updates. Here at Spain, the first European race of the season, a lot of updates coming through. You know, they've had 3 weeks now to really work on getting developments through, fast-tracking parts they need, and there's plenty of upgrades to come for the likes of Ferrari, Mclaren, and even Mercedes out in front. They've still brought some tiny updates here to Spain, so let's go through all of them. So I guess the best place to start is the world champions themselves, Mercedes. So they've brought a few little tweaks to the Mercedes car, but then again, because they're so far ahead, it looks like they're concentrating a lot more on reliability and quality of the actual parts they're bringing than, you know, quantity of the parts. So I think they're going for a lot more of a conservative route on the R&D. They're making sure the parts they're bringing are definitely going to work and be beneficial, instead of some other teams maybe bringing parts that are a bit more experimental and they're just hoping that they maybe work like they have in the simulators and CFD tunnels. So Mercedes' first little update that we've seen is two little fins above the turning vanes or barge boards on the either side of the car, just in front of the side pod inlets. You can see on the picture right now on the right hand side, that's where the side pod is. Basically the side pod inlets in the top right corner there, you can just about see it, and then the main picture is the actual barge board itself, and just above that those two little wings. That's new to the car, very small fine detail, and you've had to zoom in quite a lot on some Mercedes pictures to really pick it out. But essentially any air that's coming through on that side of the car will be affected by these two little fins. They're trailing edges going downward, so it's suggesting they're trying to move air a bit behind the barge boards themselves, and that in turn will move to the rear of the car, because the kind of bottom of the side pod is all shaped in a way where the air is going to flow along the edge and go towards the diffuser. So they're just trying to get a little more aero efficient, just little things like that affecting the air where they can to get it to the rear again. The next picture for the Mercedes, not really an upgrade here, just thought I'd like to show you a little nice detail of the vortex generators of the Mercedes car on top of the side pod. Looks like I think they may have painted a little bit differently. Looks like they've gone for some naked carbon fiber finish. I'm not too sure. I think I remember it used to be completely silver, but they've gone for carbon fiber finish now on some of those edges now, so you can see them a bit more definedly. You got the big vortex generators on the top, the two strakes there on the top of the side pod, but they've also had this new one from the start of this season, just under the Petronas symptom, where the mirror is, that kind of vein that comes up like an L shape and comes up right beside. You can actually see it from the T-cam positions when you're on board with the cars, and that's new for this entire season. They've had it since the start, so just showing Mercedes, you know, not a lot of teams are going this complex on the vortex generators. You know, other teams like McLaren, Red Bull, yes, they do have vortex generators themselves, but they're not as complex as Mercedes. Looks like Mercedes have gone for a really nice flowing connected, all the vortex generators are sort of connected by the panel coming up from the side, so it's all very nicely detailed, and just showing why Mercedes perhaps are the champions and still looking like they'll be very, very strong this weekend, with obviously a 1-2 lockout, if you didn't know already, as I'm recording this after qualifying. So unique sort of thing. We can talk about the qualifying at the same time. And finally, this next picture, the last picture from Mercedes, just a little cooling inlet. This is literally on the very bottom of the side pod towards the rear of the car, just a little cooling inlet, and they were doing some flow-vis paint on Friday practice just to see if the air was actually getting into this cooling inlet, because obviously Mercedes have had their known issues with cooling for the engine. They've got a very tight packaging, obviously the best engine of the entire grid, but it still has its little issues and niggles of cooling, so they're just trying to get more air in there so it kind of cools the car a little bit. Not a huge inlet, obviously, because they don't want to break the full aerodynamics of the side pod getting to the rear of the car, so they just put this little slot in, and it seems to be working for them. I mean, the flow-vis paint showed that the air was going all just a little bit into this inlet, so it should be working for them. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about qualifying. They got a 1-2 now, Rosberg on pole this time, and Hamilton second place. So it looks like Rosberg stepped up his game a little bit and got things right here in Spain. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think it will be a very close battle, I hope, at least. I can't really judge it, though. I don't want to judge it, really. I really have no clue who's going to win the race, really, this time out. It's going to be close for sure. Hopefully we can get a good race. So now we're going to move on to Ferrari. So Ferrari with a lot of updates at Spain. Obviously, they're trying to catch Mercedes, so we're going to rapidly go through these updates. So the first update for the Ferrari on their turning vane barge boards just by the side pods, they've now got a groove in the middle. So this is very similar to the Williams grooves. So Williams had these from the start of the season. They actually even have 2 of these, and that's just to cut drag on the turning vanes, because as you can see, instead of the air kind of completely being turned by the barge board, it will be going straight through that little slot and go straight ahead to the rest of the car. So just a little cutting, a little bit of drag there, a little bit of development for the Ferrari there at the turning vanes. The next one is going to be a little picture of the rear of the car. You can see the rear tire there on the right hand side and the side pod on the top left, and I've just highlighted the kind of, what do you call it, vane coming out the floor, turning a little left a little bit, like an L shape on the left, and that's just to affect air coming through on the side. That's kind of aimed at the kind of midway point between the rear tyre and the rear wing, so that will be trying to affect air going through, try to channel it through that little slot between the rear tyre and the rear wing, because if you get enough air through that little slot gap, it creates an almost sort of vacuum for the diffuser, and that means the diffuser can work a lot better. The next major update for Ferrari, this is the biggest one really of the entire paddock, really, not just Ferrari, the entire paddock, biggest development for this video. So you can see clearly the side pod is stepped down from the right to the left. You can see just as where the Santander logo is, that's kind of upside down, you can see that it swoops down quite dramatically on the left there, and it's sort of like it's almost like the 2012 step nose but on the side pods, and they've sort of tried to reduce the side pod size as a whole. The side pods for the Ferrari have shrunk a little bit, especially going towards the rear of the car, but also right at the front with this stepped action. And it also means that the vane coming from the bottom of the floor coming up on the side and coming back onto the side pod is a lot more kind of accented now. You know, you can really see the amount of kind of curvature of that little vane that comes and connects to the side pod from the floor. And this step down really shows how much they're trying to reduce the size. They're also trying to do some things with the air, and they're trying to get the air to move a lot more kind of fluently, and just reducing the size as a whole is a lot better for the efficiency. And this is probably the biggest update of the entire weekend for any of the cars, really. We move to a different sort of angle. You can see now, I've highlighted in yellow, I've tried to kind of draw the streaks of the shape so you can really see the step from this angle. But from this angle, you can see more. I've just drawn in yellow the outline. You can just see the amount of area now between the side pod actual face and this vane that comes up from the floor. It is so much bigger than before, the actual area of that. And that the air going through there is going to be affected right by the step, because if the air goes through there, if it tries to move to the left, obviously you have that stepped up a part of the side pod, so it kind of stops the air from kind of lifting over that side. So it'll definitely go through and channel through on that step and go down towards the diffuser. So really nice update from Ferrari there. And you know, it's I don't know if it's worked completely. I mean, Ferrari have closed in a little bit, but Sebastian Vettel was still some way away from the Mercs today, because obviously Nico Rosberg's pole position time was 1:24.681. Lewis Hamilton's second place time was a 1:24.948, and Vettel was a 1:25.458. So that's roughly, what is that? That's like almost 9/10ish, yeah. About 9/10 to the Mercedes on the pole, on the low fuel. So Ferrari trying to do their best to catch Mercedes. It's not completely working out for them, but they're slowly making strides. They definitely are a bit closer to them than they were in Bahrain. Moving on to McLaren. Now, obviously, apart from the new livery, which is being deemed a stealth camo kind of livery for McLaren, they've had some new updates, obviously, here at Spain. 3 weeks from the Bahrain gap, they wanted to try and develop as much as they could to try and catch up on the pack. And judging by qualifying, looks like they have caught up a little bit. They qualified, I believe it was 13th and 14th. Good, solid stuff. I think they beat the Force Indias outright. So McLaren definitely improving steadily. And just a nice shot here of the McLaren literally doused in Aero Floviz paint. Interestingly, this time they've used some red paint. Usually most F1 teams go for some green Floviz paint because they can see it better, but I guess on this all kind of black and red McLaren, the red Floviz paint kind of stands out quite a lot. You can just see what's happening. You know, the air's going to pass over, going to hit this paint, and it's going to chuck it everywhere, and they can see where the air is being affected, where it's exactly going. You can see just towards the left-hand side, you can see it all around the floor of the car near towards the diffuser, so just confirming to them where the air is going on this McLaren. So apart from the aerodynamic upgrades, McLaren have also changed their suspension on the rear of the car. So before they had a sort of dog-legged suspension, essentially, where it kind of curved outwards from the suspension. But this time now they've reverted to just the conventional kind of comes out the engine kind of bay and then goes straight back in to the middle. So instead of dog-legging out leftwards towards the rear of the car, it's just going straight back in the middle, which you can see from this shot looking at the rear. But apart from all this, Honda obviously have been trying to make improvements on their engine, and it looks like it's working for them a little bit. They're trying to improve. Apparently they haven't used any of their tokens yet, so that's quite that's quite promising that they haven't used any of the tokens yet, and still they're making progress on the engine. So just showing they're just trying to fine-tune the engine at the moment, and they haven't spent any of their tokens yet on a new race engine. So now going to Red Bull Racing, they've now finally got their shorter nose this weekend. So after 4 attempts of trying to get this crash test, they've finally got their shorter nose. So this is quite a big thing for Red Bull, and they'll be hoping that it makes an improvement. But actually, judging by the qualifying, that isn't the case. Again, Toro Rosso look much better than the Red Bulls out there, and they're struggling again for pace. So Red Bull having a torrid time, but their new shorter nose has finally been unveiled. So from this first picture, you can see on the left-hand side is the shorter nose, on the right-hand side is the old nose. You can see that the main part of the nose structure, and let's negate the black bump. The actual nose structure is being pushed back a lot more, and then the black bump itself has also been pushed back. If we go to the next picture now, a side-by-side comparison from Spain to the testing. So I've put in red the distances from the kind of tip of the nose to the edge of the actual front wing plate itself. You can see the distance is so dramatic, and they've really managed to push the nose back. And finally, we're going to move to the next picture. You can see now the actual cross-sectional area of the amount they've got from this new further back nose. Just means that's a lot more air going underneath the car, and hopefully being channeled by the turning vanes underneath the car, going to the rest of the car, going to the rear of the car. So this upgrade is quite a significant one for Red Bull, but unfortunately it looks like it hasn't been enough to kind of overturn the turmoils they've been having so far this season. Now we move on to Williams, a little detailed shot of the floor of their car towards the rear tyre. You can see those 2 little vents just before the rear tyre, and then those 2 slot gaps on the rear floor. Again, like the Ferrari picture, this is just trying to get air right between the rear tyre and the rear wing. And again, if they can do that successfully, that creates an almost sort of vacuum for the diffuser to work really well. And then Williams have added 2 more vortex generators on the top of their side pods towards the inside, towards the driver's side. And then it looks like they've just updated the paint a little bit with a black strip on the vane coming up from the floor. But two new vortex generators trying to channel the air a little bit more on top of that side pod here at Spain. And finally, we come to Lotus. Now, this picture is of the Lotus rear end, and this just shows the difference in development. As you can see, the Lotus floor is completely plain right by the rear wing. No kind of, slot gaps, no sort of little slits or veins. They've completely just gone for a straight floor, and it even cuts away. It doesn't go right to the rear tyre as other teams have done. Just showing the development difference between some of the teams, so you guys can understand why some cars are faster than the others. Just showing where the development is and is not for some of these cars for Lotus. But yeah, that's been all the aerodynamic analysis for the Spanish Grand Prix. Plenty of updates for the bigger teams, not too many for the lower teams, but all in all, a very big weekend for everyone here in Spain, trying to improve as much as they can on the engine and also on the car side and the chassis side as well. Qualifying, obviously, as I said, Rosberg, Hamilton, Vettel. It's going to be very interesting. Raikkonen again buckled under pressure. I think it's going to be, I hope it's going to be an interesting race. I'm not going to be for sure, but I hope it's an interesting race. So as always, guys, let me know your predictions for the top 10. I always like to read them before the race to see what you guys think of it. So comment below your top 10 for the race. If you did enjoy this video, then do leave a like. I would really appreciate it, guys. Also, if you did enjoy it and find it informative, then do share it out with any Formula 1 fans you have in contact with. That it'd be really appreciative. And if you're new around here, then do subscribe for more. As I said, this is going to be a year-long series where we do aerodynamic analysis on every single, most of the cars, if they have updates every single weekend, race weekend ahead of the Sunday race. But yeah, I've been Aarava. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Hope you enjoy Sunday, and I'll see you guys next time.